Cornwall Disability Alliance presents Accessibility and Inclusion in Landscape Design. When you think of a landscape or outside area you enjoy, what do you think of?
Hello, my name is Ewan Morris. I'm actually the chair of Mid Cornwall Lifestyles and have been since the very beginning, back in 1999. I'm into sort of history and historical buildings and things like that. So from a personal perspective, it's those sort of areas, and also, again, beach areas. It'll be good to make them more accessible than they are. But from a personal perspective, I mean, going to be able to go out to these different buildings, different areas, sort of being able to get around them like everybody else.
Steve Hollier, Founding Director of easyAccessibility.
So I'm the co-inventor of the roommate device, which gives audible description to visually impaired people using disabled access toilets. Well, my passion, my hobby is fishing. I run my own fishing boat from a beach, Cadgwith in Cornwall, and that is my environment. That's where I go every day, and the whole environment changes every day because things are moved and there's all sorts of things around to fall over. That is my environment.
My name is Dominic and I'm iSightCornwall's Assistive Technology Advisor. I like the Eden project. I've been there many times, and it's a good mix of both outdoor landscape and the indoor biomes.
Hi, my name is Melissa King. I am the clinical lead and a specialist neurophysio at the Merlin Centre in Cornwall. I feel really passionate about supporting people with disabilities to be able to access the outside area safely and to be confident and feel that they will be able to do the things that they want to do, whether it's accessing local towns and villages or whether it is pushing the boundaries a little bit more and being able to go to the beach with their families, go on the coast path if it's possible.
What are the challenges that first come to mind that you or other people living with a long-term health condition or disability face?
Hello, I'm Clare Greenwood from here in West Cornwall. Well, I personally am lucky. I don't have to make considerations, and I've become more aware of that over time. When I'm working with deaf people, I listen to things that I don't even need to think about. So an example being the Camel Trail in Cornwall, for example, if you're walking along there, a deaf person will not hear the cyclists coming up behind, so that can be quite dangerous. They won't hear dogs coming up behind them. They literally sort of not hearing potential dangers that are around them.
The problem you have is everybody's disability is different. So everybody's problems are going to be different. So I can only speak from a personal perspective on my disability. Heaven forbid I would speak on somebody about it that was blind. I would have no idea. Certainly I could empathise, but I couldn't tell you what that experience is like. Or somebody that's deaf even, Somebody in a wheelchair, you might arrive somewhere and they've got a car park there, and you arrive and they say this is the disabled area. And they've got it covered in gravel, which you spend the next 5 minutes wheel spinning, trying to get places, you know what I mean? They say, oh, it's a wheelchair friendly, but you've got to get through this gravel first, People that usually design these things are able-bodied people, which is your fundamental problem. So they come from it from an able-bodied perspective, not a disability perspective. But very simply, that is your problem, really.
John Sweeting, Manager of Activate.
I think part of a challenge around the outdoor landscape is firstly knowing when they go to places what the access is going to be like. That starts with the knowledge and information that they can gain before visiting a venue. So that could be down to the website being accessible.
Why should all design processes start with accessibility?
Because it allows inclusion of everybody. You want your area that's going to be used by the public to be inclusive. You want as many people as to use it and to access it. It might enrich everyone's lives.
For starters, we know the massive impact that access to outside areas and access to different areas provides opportunities for improving mental health, improving physical health. If places are inaccessible straight away, that's just increasing the divide of what people are able to achieve, where they're able to go.
What do you think places often forget in terms of accessibility?
When it comes to accessibility, a lot of people think of the obvious couple, which are making sure there's accessible toilets and making sure there are ramps available, whether that's a static ramp or one that can be removed. But there is so much more to having an accessible facility. Having hearing loops included within the building itself, changing places, facilities, contrasting colours for those with visual impairments.
All the senses, we need to think about, we all have our natural senses and we need to be addressing all of those senses.
They often forget there basically one fix won't solve all. Like, for example, having a Braille information guide will help all visually impaired people. That's not the case, because less than 1% of visually impaired people can read Braille these days. Not everyone's blindness is the same, so you will need multiple, levels of accessibility, depending on the visitor's requirements.
Why do you believe it's important to work with people with lived experience to design and create spaces?
My name's Ed Whitefield. I'm CEO of Mid Cornwall Lifestyles. I believe it really is important to have, ideally, a range of people with different backgrounds, different abilities, who can give a broad perspective on what accessibility means for individuals. Talking to one of our trustees who is a powered wheelchair user about a venue for a meeting and hopefully for a Christmas party. On the surface, it seems well set up as an accessible venue for people. However, it's pointed out that the toilets really aren't adequate for a powered wheelchair user. This particular person struggled a couple of times that we visited this place. He hadn't raised it previously, but he raised it this time, and it's a valid point. This is a common theme, certainly from the experience of two of our trustees. So it's really important, I suppose, to have as diverse a group and as big a group of people feeding into planning and accessibility.
Because they know the problems that we go through. We shouldn't design one situation to the detriment of somebody, another disability. I think that happens quite a lot.
You're talking to people that actually know what they're talking about. A lot of these places are designed by people who haven't got disabilities. The thing that you really need is a group of people with differing disabilities. There's no point in having a group with 5 wheelchair users. You have a deaf person, you have a blind person, you have a wheelchair user. Get them in a group and get them to go to different places. Look at what they're designing and look at what they're proposing.
If you don't live in somebody else's shoes, you literally don't know what faces them. So it's really important to ask the questions first, not rethink everything afterwards. We've had some of our deaf people go out to visit different locations, and it's fascinating the impact that has, what they come back with, things that maybe somebody who hasn't got sensory loss wouldn't even consider.
What would you like to see change about the way landscapes are designed?
Consult as many organisations and individuals as possible that represent those different disabilities and sensory loss conditions.
The most important part is making sure that accessibility isn't an add-on at the end or isn't an afterthought for a development. It should be incorporated all the way through the process.
We need to think about people with mobility difficulties from a walking perspective, people that use elbow crutches or walking sticks or walking frames, or they use mobility scooters, or they use powered wheelchairs, or they use manual wheelchairs. So there's a whole range of ways that people mobilise and get around, and if we only think of one of those things, then we're not actually reaching everybody's needs. And why shouldn't people be able to access spaces if they're being newly designed and newly developed?
Do you have any tips for designing spaces that are inclusive and accessible to everyone?
In terms of designing it, allow maybe some details to go on the internet or something so somebody can look it up, know where they're going, know the accessible areas before they get there.
Don't change things that have been established. For example, we've had a situation where recently they've been putting tactile crossing point pavement, tactile pavement in to mark crossing points in, and not actually putting a crossing point in, which is confusing to visually impaired cane users like myself, because we feel the tactile pavement. We then start looking for a crossing and, there isn't one to cross.
I think my biggest tip is definitely to do really good research. When it came to designing this amazing space, really went out and looked at the environments that we wanted to replicate. We've got Cornish stone, we've got cobbles, we've got sand, we've got stiles, we've got grass. We wanted to provide the opportunities to build people's confidence in areas that are really specific around Cornwall.
Equity means that everyone needs different things in order to have equal opportunities. What are the most important parts of equitable spaces for you?
I think literally the freedom to enjoy the space safely, so thinking about all the safety issues that are around that can affect different people with different conditions. If you feel safe, you enjoy life. If you don't feel safe, you're not supported. Then fear, stress, all those come in.
Equity basically allows you to suit that individual's needs. So it's going back to that thing I said about thinking that Braille is a be-all and fix-all for visual impairment, where less than 1% actually have the ability to read it. Just because a person has a condition, it's not going to be universal for everyone with that condition.
For us here at Activate, what would make our life an awful lot easier is having knowledge before visiting sites, be that through the website or any other communications we have with a place. We hear an awful lot of the time our place is accessible, and then you arrive and there's 3 steps into the door and they haven't got a ramp to be able to do it.
How does social inclusion benefit not only people living with a long-term health condition or disability, but everyone?
If you've got it right, it allows all society to be able to access anything. And of course what you want is to all of society to be in together, because it allows them to everybody to experience all of society. So which has got to be a good thing, that you're allowing all of society to get involved, whatever it is, whether it's being able to access organisations, access environments, so on and so forth.
Social inclusion means that no one's left behind and everyone is included.
A new facility, for example, isn't going to be able to necessarily spend lots and lots of money on their access, but being able to improve it over time, it's an important thing to not just think about in its infancy, but throughout the longevity of a programme or a facility.
Being Cornwall's oldest charity for sight loss, we have a lot of experience in all levels of sight loss, whether it be very mild short-sightedness all the way to black blind like myself. Basically, we can advise urban designers and people who are building attractions in Cornwall. We can advise them and some guidelines to kind of cater to all levels of visual impairment.
The Merlin Centre started as a charity for people with multiple sclerosis. Over the years we've started diversifying and working with a broader population, so we've worked with people with other neurological conditions. At the heart of it all is the clients, and we need to make sure that at the end of everything they are the heart of our decision making process.
This process of inclusion and being an ongoing process, I think it's certainly that, sort of bringing in a wider range of people to have a view. From our point of view as an organisation, we encourage our clients and trustees to be involved, to have their voices included.
Everything changes. Everything changes. It's something that was done 10 years ago might not be good now, because the environment changes, people change, people's abilities change, disabilities change. So you constantly need to update things. You constantly need to look at things. It's an ongoing process, particularly with what the landscaping and design. Everything's an ongoing process.
Produced by Discover Voices, part of Disability Cornwall and Isles of Scilly.